Welcome back to lesson 12 on doors. We're just going to pick up where we were in the Windows lessons with this return of the finishes into the reveal. You can see here it works in exactly the same way. Interior wall detail, return 2 components. Exterior wall detail, return 3 components, and that appears to work. But what you notice here, this door has a side light, which is this side panel on the left of the door. The default door class for a door is door main. I prefer to differentiate internal doors, so you'll see that an internal door is in a new class, which I've called door internal. That differentiation I've found useful. Unfortunately, Vectorworks doesn't seem to recognise that the skylight has been added. So you can see in 3D the opening has been reduced to the door leaf size centred on the entire object. In order to fix that in 3D, I have to delete the return of the external wall components. This isn't styled. We want to make it a style, we go through the steps that were the Windows lesson part 2, and it's exactly the same. You just go through all the steps, identifying which parameters you do want to control within the style and which you don't. So, for example, you might have include side light as a controllable parameter in the style. Just to quickly look at 2D visualization. Again, jam is in door frame, leaf is in door class, it's the same setup. Astrogal, it appears in some double doors as a kind of central post or mid-style. Threshold can be in seals or in the floor finish class, and all the rest you've seen before in the Windows lesson. Threshold, yes, you can include the threshold. I want to look at that from the side. Okay, here we have a concrete throated sill because it's an external door, and there are parameters there, and then your 3D classes. The jamb is in door frame. The trim we've discussed before is in a hidden controllable visibility class, so that you can detail it in your viewports, and the rest you've seen before. Now, I hinted last time that the hardware set would be in the Vectorworks default library. Sorry to say, that is actually wrong. The door custom hardware is a kind of library resource, but that when you come to select your door hardware set, it'll actually be in the user library. What happens is that when you select that hardware, it pops up in your drawing folder. So you move it to a sensible folder in symbols, in fittings, hardware fittings. There we are. Right. So let's have a look at that. So we go to settings. Here we are, hardware sets. The hardware main is the default class for hardware. Now, so we're using residential entry set. Fine. You want to view it. There it is. It's grayed out because if you want to change it, you go to manage hardware. There's the set, residential entry set. You can see I've made some new ones. WC push, persons with disability grab rails. I've made some of my own. If you want to do that, you add, you give it a name, and you have to give it a hardware ID number. And then here, now this folder is looking at that file in your user library, and you choose whichever one you want. For argument's sake, let's select that one, right? And then you just click done, and then if you want to select the different, or rather the new hardware handle, you click on your new set. No, not Vectorworks libraries, actually. User libraries default door hardware. So, and you right click and you open it. So these are my grab rails for disabled. washroom doors. Yeah, and I've made, and I think I've edited this one. So yes, it inserts in hardware main, and you'll find, for some curious reason, the Vectorworks default file, everything's in class none, and of course the attributes are not by class. So here I've moved those two solids into fittings metal aluminium. Once it's in your own folder, you can edit it and it will update. So really it is exactly what it says. It's a library resource that brings, it basically imports it. And once you've imported it, you can modify it. So here, for example, this one, you know, if I wanted to change that, I don't need now it's already imported as a hardware set in this drawing. I don't need to go back to the user folder. I can simply find it because I've put it tidily into hardware fittings. Oops, I've probably forgotten which knob lever it is, so let's just go back into fittings and check which one it is, so that we know which one to edit. So I go to hardware. Okay, so I'm looking at residential entry set lever. I go to manage it, and it's showing me it's the lever 08 rows with bolt. Should be here somewhere. There it is. Lever 08 with bolt, and I can edit it. Alright. It's a group in hardware main. In this case, it's also a symbol in hardware main. I've got it in hardware main. Presumably, what have I done? Oh no, so I've given hardware main a default texture metal silver plate. But if I want to change that, we can make it. I've got a couple of classes down here for plastic, plastic yellow. Okay, assign it to that, and you'll see now that that will then update. Okay, so I'm not editing the one in the user library. I'm editing the one that has now been imported into this drawing. Okay, so there's lots of hardware. Some of them are really quite clumsy things, rather nasty extrudes. Anyway, you'll find it's very easy to make a curved D-pull extrude along path. What you'll notice is that the way it works in plan, the thickness of the door, Vectorworks seems to recognise that the door thickness can change. You might have a little problem with that. If you have any trouble, you just have to fiddle with it until it works. This is an internal door, and it's got a trim. It's got a trim externally because there's an offset to make the door actually work. How doors actually work. People put the door on the centre line of the wall, which isn't how doors work. So I would appeal to you to please adjust the offset, and there it is, offset in wall minus 72.5. Yes, it's got the trim on the opening face, and as we've noted before, even though in 2D the wall components show the return into the reveal, in 3D they don't. The type of door, this is solid. I mean, there are options: panel, custom, glass, blah blah blah. So it's a flush door. You can get those options in your object info palette. We'll have a quick look at some different variations on the door. There is the kick plate. So the kick plate is in a class I've made called hardware kicks, so that I can control the kick plate. It might be that I want to keep the kick plate switched off but not the knobs, and it's got some vision panels, and you'll control these. You'll see what they do. But it moves around. It's a little counterintuitive, but it works. You might have seen this from our video on the high-rise housing tower, inserted into a glass block wall. What I want to come along to actually is We'll just kind of scroll through this little kitchen hatch. I mean, you know, you can have a lot of fun. This has a transom. It's a panel door with two panels, and the bottom panel has a set height. By the way, to set the transom height, if you remove the transom height, the door size changes. You'll figure that out. So the control of the transom, there's the spring height. Spring height sets the transom height. The door height, the leaf size is 2050. So overall it's plus 388. But if you know what size door you want, okay, you know if it's a 926 or 915 for disabled access, you can put it in as 1200 and then change the opening size. It's probably better for the schedule because people will want to know what is the structural opening. So that's that. It's called the rough opening. 1236, whereas the leaf is only 1200, so it's allowing 18 mil all round. Spring height important to control. You can see what happens. Let's make it 150, and that's what happens. Okay, so it shrinks. Yeah, so it's a panel door. It's got a set top panel, so that if it didn't have a set top panel, it would divide it equally in half. Okay, I don't want that. So set top panel and top panel height 1430. That's a little counterintuitive. The set top panel height is for some reason the subtraction of the overall height minus the height of the lower panel that you want, and then then you can put the glazing bars in top and bottom panels differently, and glazing in top panel. Okay, so that's it's very nice. To get this tongue and groove kind of effect in the bottom panel, and this controls those grooves. Number of vertical panels, number of horizontal panels, so that the mid-style width is basically these panel sizes here. If you want a nice narrow groove, you have to adjust that height and the number of panels to get that groove to work. This is a gate, and it's in a new class called door gate. To get this effect, I can't do that with panels for some reason. To create this timber panel in a nice metal frame, do is make it glass, 9 horizontal bars, no vertical bars, and the trick is to put the glazing as timber. Glazing thickness then is 22, so it's a thick wooden board set in this metal gate. Unfortunately, with the bi-parting swing bi-part, I can't articulate the junior leaf. So the panel settings you give for your main leaf, they're not transferred to the minor leaf. So the minor leaf remains a kind of solid. You can see in the preview. I'll try it in an OpenGL preview. Yeah. So here was a similar version of that. It's got a semi-transparent fence, anti-climb. We made a class whose texture is fittings metal fence. Texture is metal fence clear view 90. You can have a lot of fun.